Before we actually go on to the site, I just want to give you a little bit of orientation to the place and walk us through the visitor center. Moving through, you can see that apparently Boeing was key in the construction of the visitor center, and some great photos on the wall. Again, Çatalhöyük is built on an alluvial plain, so lots of crops, lots of farming. Coming in, this is a great visitor center, set up with a TV. This informative DVD is about 10 minutes long, and you can find it on the main Çatalhöyük website. Gives a great intro. So, to begin at the beginning, the first panel just gives a sense of the layout of the site. Before we move on, you see F is the north site, will be there, and then I is the south site, will be there also. And once we get into that south site, you'll see that there is an amazing drop of multiple layers, and even on the design here, or on this panel, you can tell what kind of height they've dug to. And basically, we are in D, and right behind us in E, there's a dig house with no public access. So I believe that's where archaeologists, when they are here, live. So these first panels just give an overview of Çatalhöyük. Says that on a windy day in November, two men raced down the hill screaming, "It's Neolithic at the top, and it's also Neolithic at the bottom." It was 1958, and the names of these men were David French, Alan Hall, and James Mellard. They had stumbled upon Çatalhöyük. And it says it wasn't until 1961 that Mellard returned to begin digging. And as you know, layers upon layers upon layers of houses built one on top of the other with no streets. Everyone entered through the roof. This is an image of some of the pictographs they found on the walls. It's pretty incredible. Apparently bulls were big. You'll see, I believe it's in the south site. It's the north side. There's supposed to be some bull antlers that we can see in the floor, although I'm not sure exactly where they were. I did give a guess, and I got pretty close up so you can see if you can find them. And then this is great. Mellard apparently had two loves in his life. One was Çatalhöyük, and the other one was Arlet Sinani, who was a Turkish archaeologist that Mellard met in 1952. They married in 1954. And apparently Arlet was the one who took photos of the site as they were digging that created the media frenzy that kind of put Çatalhöyük on the map. Now we come up to Ian Hodder. Ian Hodder took over in 1965. And Ian Hodder has published quite a bit on, well, more than anyone else has that I've been able to find, on the gender issues, or lack thereof, here in Çatalhöyük. This project for me started with a conference that I was coming to in Turkey, and a few of the days got canceled, and so Leo and I were talking. We decided that it would be great if I came and tried to interview an archaeologist and do some filming of the site. Again, apparently we can't do that because there are no archaeologists here. I'm so very sorry, but one of the main reasons I wanted to come outside of, doing this for your course is that I've heard that there is no gender inequality here in Çatalhöyük and also no conflict. I wasn't able to find anything on the on the conflict aspect, but apparently Ian Hodder has published quite a bit, one specific article, Women and Men at Çatalhöyük, that says there was pretty much no gender difference. It was an egalitarian society in terms of male and female roles. And they know this from isotopes found in bones and also teeth wear. And so they study the isotopes found in bones to get a sense of people's diets, and the idea is that if there is a dominant gender, that gender will most likely get better food. And apparently there wasn't any difference in the diet between men and women, and also no difference in the basic wearing pattern of their teeth, so they weren't eating different foods. Additionally, apparently they have found quite a few de-headed people here in the excavation. And the idea behind this is that oftentimes people were dug up and their heads were removed, and they believed that this was symbolic to, point to heads of lineage, heads of families, and the archaeologists have not found a significant difference in the number of male and female heads. So that also leads them to think that there was no real gender difference, and so whether you were a man or a woman didn't dictate what roles you could play in society. What we're looking at right now is a stamp. And these stamps came about sometime after there was a shift in Çatalhöyük from a farming society, from a hunting society to a farming society. And then there also appeared property ownership, and they know this from finding materials that were stamped with, symbols assigning ownership to that object or to the house. And so apparently in some of the upper levels of the dig, you start to see signs of gender division of labor, and this happened after or alongside of society turning to an agricultural society and also property ownership. I'm just going to go through and show you some of these images quickly. Basically, if you can read the taglines, there's evidence that cattle were domesticated as early as 6500 BC, and pottery that dates back as far as 7000 BC. And it's really exciting. On the path to the south site, we come across pottery shards all along the path, which is amazing to me that there are so many shards just left lying in the middle of the street there. Hunting scene that dates back to 6300 BC. And a vulture scene that dates back to 6700 BC. Now on this wall you'll see a reimagining of one of the panels of artwork they found in one of the houses. It's a pictograph of a hunting scene. And as we're walking along, these are just images of a dig. And these panels give you an idea of what goes into the dig as we talk about in the north site. The archaeologists not only have to remove huge layers of earth to get to each different layer of house, but they have to remove dirt and soil from all of the ovens and storage spaces inside of each house, which is incredibly time-consuming. And then this panel's describing the process that they go through to wash and process the pieces after they bring them back from the site. And this is a panel talking about dating. So again, isotopes found in bone are used to discover what kind of diet people most likely had. And then they can date bones and objects with radiocarbon dating, artifact typology, and of course, tree rings in pieces of timber that are found throughout housing. And this is a panel with an artist's rendition of what it must have looked like over 9,000 years ago. And it says that daily life took place on the roofs as well as inside of the houses. Wooden ladders facilitated access from roof to roof. If you've ever been in the Southwest in the U.S., you'll see quite a bit of that also. I'm sure throughout many, many ruins within the United States and around the world. Again, here is another artist rendering, pictographs that they found. And there's a plaque here that says, within this alcove, there are pictographs with people that seem to be dancing, teasing, baiting, or playing with wild animals. And the archaeologists believe that they could have been demonstrating their dominance over the animals through these images, through the paintings. So you see what you think about that. The artifacts in this display are renditions. Apparently, the original objects were excavated in the 1960s and are now held by the Museum of Anatolian Civilizations in Ankara. It's a wooden box, and this is a hook and eye used for clothing. And here's an awl, also used for clothing, often for thicker materials like leather. An image of an archaeologist. And this panel is talking about the fact that Çatalhöyük was built on an alluvial floodplain, and they're trying to understand why. And they believe that the marshes essentially provided, great resources such as water, not only for drinking, but for bricks, reeds for roofing and matting, firewood, grasses, as well as fish, water, bird eggs, and bird meat to complete their diets. And also, the river was probably used to transport oak and juniper timbers down from the uplands. So you see a lot of juniper here also, which, again, U.S. Southwest, juniper's a big part of life there. These are tiny clay pots, and the archaeologists don't know if they were used to store very small things or if they were children's toys. Here's obsidian. Again, obsidian tools like these look like arrowheads, and they call them projectile points, found throughout the U.S., made out of obsidian specifically. Now this is a pottery vessel that was typical of that from Çatalhöyük, and they say that these pottery vessels are among the oldest in Anatolia. And it's pretty amazing. We're going to find pottery shards on the way up to the south site that look just like this, the same coloration, the same thickness. So you can see how those shards looked when they were pots, plates, cups, other dishes. This is a photograph of some of the balls that we actually mentioned in the north site. Archaeologists aren't sure what they are, but they believe that the balls were heated in the fire and then put in pots of water to cook meat and vegetables. So they were cooking tools. And this is a panel that talks about how the tools that were made here were usually used by individual households. and that there's widespread evidence that the people of Çatalhöyük traveled great distances across that beautiful plain that we just saw, or that we're going to see outside, called the Konya Plain. They did this to graze sheep and goats and to collect berries and timber. And it says that they traded as far as the Red Sea. Now this is beautiful. It's a flint dagger with a bone handle. And it says that flint daggers used at Çatalhöyük are among the finest made during the Neolithic period in Anatolia. And the bone handle of this particular dagger is carved in the form of coiled snakes. If I can get you a little bit closer to see that. Yeah. And then again, these are, photos of different animal bones and things that they found on the site. And these are renderings of some of the pieces of artwork they found in the excavation. So our Çatalhöyükian artists didn't just do people and animals, but they did these really wild geometric designs also. And this is a panel talking about how archaeologists, of course, use the symbols in pictographs to try to get a sense of how the people thought back then, what their daily lives looked like, how their minds worked. And as you can see, this big red skull was actually a plastered human skull found back in 2004. It was found in a grave held in the arms of a female skeleton. They think that the skeleton was the head was a revered male ancestor. This is an image of a clay figure that archaeologists found that they think was probably a human, but they're not sure. So you can guess about that. What do you think? Animal, vegetable, mineral, human, spirit, being, other. And now here we are at the goddess. Again, there's a big question, or a big emphasis rather, put on the gender roles here in Çatalhöyük. And there are many people who think that it was one of the first, matriarchal, widespread communities, societies on the planet. In other words, that when humans lived in clans, many people think that a lot of those cultures were matrilineal, but they considered Çatalhöyük an example of a city that was actually matrilineal. And again, the archaeologists here are saying that it was not matrilineal, that it was egalitarian. And they point to some of the figurines and artwork that they found that show no sex features at all. And they say that they believed that Çatalhöyük's people centered on their relationships with animals in the natural world as opposed to a goddess. Here are some images of excavating. So from some of the information I've read in preparation for my trip here, there are these goddess communities, which are communities full of people who are some feminist, others just very interested in the role women have played throughout time in society. And a lot of these goddess communities have come to Çatalhöyük to both worship and pray, as well as to debate with archaeologists their findings. So if you go online, you can find great letters between Ian Hodder, the archaeologist, and a few of the women who were very involved in these different goddess communities. And they're kind of debating the findings that are coming out of Çatalhöyük. Matrilineal societies are basically those where property runs through the females, through the women, and also lineage runs through the women. So a very easy and simplistic way to think about this is when you get married, do you go to the man's village, or does the man move into your village? Does property stay within the woman's family, or does it get handed down to men? This image is pretty amazing. Basically, they found the body of this baby that they say was buried with great care. You can see the bracelets on the wrist and the ankles and teardrop-shaped bone beads. So they decided to preserve the entire burial intact. They lifted it from its site just like this, and it now resides at the Konya Archaeological Museum. This panel talks a bit about local involvement. So during season when there are archaeologists and lots of tourists here, locals come and they do some of the guiding, tour guides, they cook, they clean. They also help to excavate. And of course, school children from the region and around the world come to Çatalhöyük. This is an image of some of the local women who are cleaning some of the pieces that they found in that day's dig. I assume that day's dig. And before we go, we'll take a quick video of this. This is considered the experimental house. It was built in 1999, and the idea was to experiment with different working theories they had about, how the bricks were made, what the interior experience of houses looked like. And so they've used their experimental house, and the sign is saying that they've actually found quite a few things from experimenting with the model. Different ways of mixing and applying plaster and paint. The oven has been lit using both wood and dung, which is basically excrement, probably sheep or goat poo, to be very scientific. And here's an image of archaeologists doing very, very detailed, tedious excavations. You can see the images on the wall that they're uncovering. And then here's the last two panels. Well, the last panel and the last image. This is of someone, looks like probably a student, excavating one of the skeletons that were buried. And here's someone excavating another burial site. And that's it. That's the Visitor Center of Çatalhöyük, and we'll see you in a couple minutes in the north site.